Hello everyone. I'd like to take a couple minutes to talk to you about emissions and greenhouse gases in the environment. Now to start off is I wanted to talk about vehicles and how they introduce greenhouse gases into the environment. Now this is a simple flow chart of how an engine works. Right here you see you have your engine. All right, very simple, very basic. We're not going in depth. All right, now into your engine we introduce first air and fuel. Air and fuel are introduced into a contained cylinder so it can mix together and create the foundations of an explosion per se. Then, once everything's mixed together, a spark is put into place into this controlled environment to create an explosion. The explosion then moves mechanical components and creates linear movement. Okay? Now, as everything's exploding inside this contained environment, you have to have a byproduct. You just can't burn it up and it's no longer there. It defies the laws of physics. All right, so we have a byproduct, and this is the molecular compound CO2, more commonly referred to as carbon dioxide. Now, carbon dioxide is a common element that we commonly know as, and we more or less think about it when we exhale. We breathe in oxygen, we exhale carbon dioxide. That is because we are carbon life forms. Okay. Now, since we know how the combustion engine works, I just wanted to throw out some figures from the EPA, and you can find this on EPA.org, is that there's over 6,673 million metric tons of CO2 that are poured into the atmosphere every year. And per the Department of the Interior, and you can find that on the departmentofinterior.org, that there are nearly 254 million cars in the U.S. alone. Out of these is the EPA has found that 31% of all emissions come from transportation. So you can see that all these vehicles, especially just in the U.S., that a lot of our emissions are coming from our own cars. And President Obama has made a plan to adjust our emissions that are being put in to reduce the amount of emissions put into the environment. He wants to bring the emissions down by 30% by the year 2030. Now it seems like it's a little far off, but it'll be here before you know it. And his proposal can be found under the Clean Power Act, or Clean Power Plan, I'm sorry. And you can find that at the whitehouse.org in order to see more of it. But I want to talk to you a little bit about the different practices and policies that we can implement in order to reach this goal possibly sooner, if not on time. Now, some of the first things that should be put in is that there is technology out there that can help take down your emissions. Now, charcoal, any carbon, activated carbon of such, it tends to attract other carbon-based elements, such as carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. Now, when I say absorb, it's not the same as absorbing. Absorbing means when it basically takes in and becomes something new. Adsorbing is like if you picture this carbon, it's like an element comes over of CO2 comes over and it sticks to it, and it'll stay stuck to it. It just sticks to the surface of the element itself. Okay. Now, carbon is a very simple component. You find it every day. If you look inside of your chimney at your house, and we commonly refer to it as soot, it's actually carbon. All the wood that's been burned up, and I actually have a bag, and you can see that it's very easily attained. And we use it on lots of different things to include food preparation. We use it in medical treatment. It's also used by the military after a chemical attack in order to sanitize. It's not perfect, but it does the job. These charcoal filters is like once they use the principle of adsorption, it's like it cuts down the amount of CO2 and CO that's being sent off from your muffler into the atmosphere. Now, if you look at this display, it kind of gives you a very, very easy look at how it works. Now, if you look here, here's your exhaust pipe, all right, your tailpipe from your car, and everything from your engine that we went over earlier, all the CO2 is coming out the tailpipe. Okay, it's like it vents it out. Now you can see directly out, assuming there was no filter, there's a lot of CO2. However, you take a charcoal filter and you pass the gas through the charcoal, It's like this is meant to display that there's less CO and CO2 being released from the tailpipe into the atmosphere. And it's all being retained by the charcoal inside the charcoal filter, or the activated carbon. And this was actually studied about the effects of activated carbon by some Chinese scientists, and they did it in a lab over in China, and they published the results in the academic journal of chemistry, where they have found that certain activated carbons, when they're impregnated with other elements, that there are different effects of adsorption. Now, some of the other practices outside of ingenious techniques such as filters is practices. And it's like we need the people to get involved and contribute in order for us to better reach our goal. Simple tools are not going to get us all the way. Now, one of the first things is, we preach it all the time, anytime there's an energy crisis or there's an excess of any kind of byproduct, it's energy conservation. Now, everyone's always heard the speech where you like turn the light off if you're not going to use it, and turn the water off is like shorter showers. Well, same thing applies here. And it's like in our cars, and it's like using less fuel. Less fuel, that's the first and primary means of cutting this down. And it's very basic logic when you think about it. Using less fuel creates less CO and CO2 into the environment. Okay? And in order to do this, maybe we'll have to create a mileage budget for using our vehicles. For example, maybe you don't go and drive off to lunch during the workday. Also, we have to invest in fuel economic cars. Fuel economic cars, vehicles are getting better every day, in which case you're getting more mileage per your fuel. And if you get more mileage for less fuel, you're still putting in less mileage for driving more. Other driving practices is like that we can get better at. We can avoid peak traffic driving, and I'm talking about stop and go traffic, where you stop at a light or you keep going, or a car in front of you stops and you have to stop and you have to go, stop and go. Well, very simple logic here as well. If you stop, you have to use more fuel to build up acceleration and the speed to your desired speed. So you have to use more fuel, and then once you stop, you're back at square one, in which case you have to use that much fuel to get up to the desired speed again. So you see how that can constantly go into the energy conservation. Other driving practices includes avoiding excessive speeding and impractical driving. Now, the main one is speeding on the highways, simply for the fact if you're speeding past everyone and you're not going with the flow of traffic, you're eventually going to have to slow down, and you're going to have to, the same principle of stopping and going, you're going to have to use extra fuel to get up to the speed that you want to go. Same principle. And finally, keeping your vehicle inspected and in good working condition, because a vehicle cannot work as it was designed to if it's not upkept. And that includes making sure that filters are changed, includes your catalytic converters, also includes your oil changes, and making sure that your fuel's being treated properly. All of this combined will help you contribute better to a cleaner environment. Now, most states, they require you to have state-regulated inspections where they'll check your emissions, and they can tell you, hey, you need to do some more work on your vehicle, but why make it that far? In conclusion, I want to just let you know, it's like we can achieve this goal. We can reach this 30%, and with the use of simple practices and these simple tools and the simple technology, is like we can make this world cleaner, and we can more importantly, keep it intact. And I want you to think about this next time you're driving your vehicle. If you're not going to do it for you, do it for your kids, or even better yet, do it for the generations after them and after them. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed.